When you picture Confucius, what comes to mind? Probably some wise old sage, right? Sitting on a mountain, handing out these perfect, timeless proverbs. But what if that's not the best way to get to know him? What if, to really understand his ideas, we need to look past the proverbs and meet the people he talked to every single day? So that's what we're going to do. Let's step inside his classroom and meet the real Confucius, the teacher.
Okay, so let's start with the big one. The big one. How do you actually teach someone to be a good person? Think about that for a second. This question, this was the engine that drove Confucius's entire life's work. And let's be real, it's just as massive and relevant today as it was 2,500 years ago. But his answer, well, it wasn't some simple formula you could just write down.
And that's the thing, right? Confucius never sat down and wrote a textbook called How to Be Good 101. His philosophy wasn't a bunch of abstract rules you just memorize for a test. No, it was a living, breathing practice. It was something that got hammered out in the day-to-day, in the conversations, the arguments, the deep personal connections he had with his inner circle. So if we really want to get it, we have to meet them. We have to meet his students.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll meet his inner circle, his A-team. Then we'll zoom in on his star pupil, and of course, some of the tougher cases. We'll see how he adapted his lessons for everyone, dig into a really amazing conversation about what makes a good life, and then we'll wrap it all up with the big takeaway. All right, first up, inside the master circle. Let's meet the A-team. So, who were these people anyway? Well, Confucius pulled in this incredibly diverse and talented crew. And the key thing is, he didn't try to cram them all into the same mold. Nope. He saw their unique strengths and actually organized his whole school around them.
So take a look at this. It's basically the curriculum for his school, broken down into 4 specialties. And what's so fascinating is that it wasn't just about being a good person, Look at this range. He was training experts in virtuous conduct, sure, but also in public speaking, in practical government, and in arts and culture. The goal wasn't just to be a good person sitting alone in a room. The goal was to be a well-rounded, effective person who could actually contribute to society.
Okay, so among all these talented people, there was one student who was just on another level. The star pupil, the one who really, truly got it. His name was Yan Hui, and his story tells us so much about what Confucius really cared about. Man, you can just feel the weight in these words. Someone asked Confucius, hey, which of your students is truly eager to learn? And this was his answer. He could only name one guy, Yan Hui. And then he adds that devastating line, he died. Now there is no one. That just says it all, doesn't it? It left a hole that nobody else could ever fill. He was, without a doubt, the star pupil. But then you see a quote like this, and it kind of throws you for a loop, right? Hui is no help to me at all. He is pleased with everything I say. That sounds like a complaint. But Confucius meant it as the highest praise. See, Yan Hui's understanding was so deep, so intuitive, he didn't need to argue or poke holes in the lessons. He instantly got the core of what the master was saying. It wasn't about blindly agreeing. It was about a profound, immediate connection to the ideas.
And here's what really shows his commitment. The guy was brilliant, but he lived in what the texts call dire poverty. Just totally broke. But while other students were maybe looking for a government job to get rich, Yan Hui, he didn't care. His focus was 100% on learning, on pursuing the way. For him, that was the real prize, way more valuable than any money or comfort.
So when Yan Hui died young, Confucius was just shattered. His grief was completely raw and overwhelming. This cry, "Heaven has bereft me," that's not some detached philosopher talking. That is a man, a teacher, who felt like a part of his own soul had been ripped away. It's such a powerful human moment.
And get this, his other students actually criticized him for it. They thought he was being too emotional, showing undue sorrow. But he just fires back at them. He's basically saying, are you kidding me? If I'm not going to be this upset for him, who am I ever going to be this upset for? His love for Yan Hui was so deep that the normal rules just didn't apply. Losing his best student felt like losing his greatest hope for the future.
Okay, so not everyone was a star pupil like Yan Hui. Not even close. And to really see the other side of Confucius the teacher, we've got to look at the tough cases, the students who were a real handful. Because how he dealt with them, that's where we see one of his most important ideas, this concept of balance.
And this is so key to his whole philosophy. For Confucius, being a good person wasn't about being perfect. It was about finding the middle ground, finding balance. He famously looked at 2 students and said one overshoots the mark and the other falls short. And when someone asked him, well, which one's better, his answer was basically neither. They're both missing the point. Going way too far is just as much of a failure as not going far enough. So the poster child for overshooting the mark, that was a guy named Tzu Lu. He had great qualities. He was brave, super loyal, straight to the point. But he was also impulsive, a bit aggressive, and had zero chill. He was the one who would just blurt out questions about death and the afterlife, stuff Confucius thought you shouldn't worry about until you figured out how to live. And the master knew his students so well, he made this really chilling prediction. A guy like that, he's not going to die a natural death. So what do? You've got students who are too much and students who are not enough. How do you teach both of them? Well, this is where we really see the genius of Confucius as a teacher. He didn't have some one-size-fits-all lesson plan. No way. His message was custom-tailored for every single person he taught.
Okay, this story is just brilliant. It perfectly shows what he was doing. You have two different students who come to him and ask the exact same question. Should I act immediately on what I learn? So, to the impulsive one, Tzu Lu, Confucius says, whoa, hold on. Think about your other responsibilities. He tells him to slow down. But then a more timid, hesitant student asks the same thing, and Confucius says, yes, absolutely, go for it. It's incredible, right? The lesson had nothing to do with the question itself. It was all about fixing the unique imbalance in each student. He was pushing the slow one forward and pulling the fast one back.
Okay, so this all leads up to one of the most famous scenes in the Analects. It's a moment where Confucius gathers some of his students and basically asks them, all right, what's your ultimate dream? If someone gave you the power to do anything, what would you do with it? And their answers, oh man, they reveal everything about who they are and what they really value.
So the first three guys give these really practical, ambitious answers. You've got Tzu Lu, true to his nature, saying he wants to command an army and make people brave. Then John Yu says he wants to run a small state and make it prosperous, and another wants to become an expert in diplomacy and rituals. And look, these are all good things, right? Noble goals, all about public service, fixing the world's problems.
And then it's the fourth student's turn, Zheng Kengxi. He's just been sitting there, quietly playing his lute this whole time. He puts it down, and his answer is, just from another world. He's not talking about running states or leading armies. He paints this simple picture of just enjoying a beautiful spring day, hanging out with friends, enjoying a cool breeze, and then heading home singing. That's it.
And then, Confucius delivers the punchline. He listens to all these big, world-changing ambitions, and then he just sighs and says, I'm with Tian. Boom. He picks the guy who wants to go swimming and sing poetry. And this is the whole point. It shows that for Confucius, a good life isn't only about grand achievements. It's also about being in harmony with yourself and the world, being able to appreciate a simple, perfect moment.
So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway from all this? What's the final lesson we learn from spending time inside the master's classroom?
I think it's this. Confucius wasn't teaching a set of rules. He was teaching people. His classroom was like a laboratory for how to live. He was a kind of master psychologist who saw that the path to becoming a better person is different for everybody. If you're impulsive, you need to learn restraint. If you're timid, you need to find courage. And the end goal, it isn't just about getting power or being famous. It's about finding that balance, that harmony in your own life.
And so that kind of leaves us with one final question. A question for you. If Confucius were your teacher right now, what do you think he'd focus on with you? What's your tendency? Do you overshoot the mark or do you fall short? What imbalance in your own life would he gently try to correct? Really thinking about that, that's the true lesson from his classroom.